Good morning and welcome to Before the Bell with Roman and Zain. And it's Thursday, September 4th, 2025. And it feels like the news cycle has been running at full speeds throughout this whole week, doesn't it, Zain?
For sure.
Yeah, and now we're getting a look at the headlines that are just rocking the markets.
You said it exactly right, Roman. It's Thirsty Thursday. It's a lot to process. We saw three huge stories break just yesterday, and they all have these ripple effects. The convergence of a military parade in Beijing, some new trade friction with India, and a key report on European security. It's just given analysts and investors so much to chew on.
Yeah, Zane, and today we're going to dive into how all these stories are interconnected within each other, from a recalibrating job market to a major ruling on tech. But first, now let's get into the rundown of today's daily top headlines.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Well, the U.S. stock market finally found its footing yesterday with a really notable rally in the tech sector. Just on Tuesday, we saw how the Nasdaq almost finished at its month low, but yesterday at the trading close, we S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite both finished the day in the green, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average saw just a slight dip. Early market activity this morning appears to be building on that sentiment. We saw some specific strength in semiconductor stocks and a lot of the big time tech companies, which really led the charge.
Yeah, that's a great point you got there, Zane. And I think a huge part of the tech rally was surrounded around the Alphabet antitrust case, as it felt as a major source of uncertainty was just lifted up for the entire sector. As you have many analysts that are breathing a sigh of relief as the worst case scenario was avoided. And just like that, the market is viewing this as a signal that the regulatory environment might be more than about managing and reforming rather than dismantling.
And that's not the only thing moving markets. A weaker than expected report on the US job market also played a big role. That bolstered expectations that, maybe the Federal Reserve will consider a rate cut at its upcoming meeting. This news gave the bond market some much needed relief, with Treasury yields actually pulling back a bit. And, and especially in this podcast, we're going to be saying the words uncertainty a lot because that is the number one word that drives stocks up or down. Anytime there's uncertainty in the market, you will see this stock go down. If the uncertainty is less and people are more confident, you will see the stock price go up.
Mm-hmm. And it's truly fascinating to me, Zane, as because the market is clearly weighing in between the two competitive narratives here. On one hand, a rate cut could definitely boost the economy as it makes things cheaper to borrow. But on the other hand, analysts are concerned about the potential inflationary pressures from all this trade policy that we've been seeing, as this is a classic balancing act that the market has to be able to navigate. And for today's bell ringer, we've got two major headlines that are really setting the market's tone. First off, a federal judge's ruling in a huge antitrust case against Google's parent company, Alphabet. The outcome was a huge relief as many investors saw it as a way to avoid the most severe consequences for the company. We saw Alphabet stock surge about almost 9% today as the company was able to add over 150 billion in market value, as the ruling specifically sparred the company from having to break up its Chrome browser and Android operating system.
And that is a massive win for them, Roman. Analysts at places like JP Morgan and Wedbush were quick to raise their price targets, signaling that they feel a lot more confident about the long-term future of Google's core search business. The ruling seems to be setting a precedent. Regulators are willing to impose rules, but they may stop short of completely dismantling America's tech giants. I mean, they did mandate some charges, like requiring Google to share data with their competitors. So that's a new layer of compliance they'll have to deal with, and analysts will be watching to see how that impacts things down the road. But overall, that is a huge win for them, and I feel like they'll be considered to be successful.
Yeah, Zane. And to move on, now our second bell ringer takes us to Beijing, China, as we've got to talk about the military parade that just went on, as China held this parade to mark the 80th anniversary of World War II. And they displayed all sorts of firepower and advanced military hardware, as this was a showcase of a pretty clear message to the West, as the parade was held on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, where China also positioned itself as a growth catalyst for Central Asia and India, deepening its trade ties with the neighboring countries around it.
And the messaging here was definitely dual purpose. For a domestic audience, the parade was all about national unity and showing strength, especially with some of the economic headwinds they're facing. For an international audience, however, it was a pure strategic theater. Analysts pointed out that it reinforces a peace through strength narrative, basically saying that China is ready to defend its interests. With leaders like Russia's Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong un in attendance, the event was a powerful visual of a growing network of nations trying to forge an alternative to the US led global order.
Yeah, Zane, I agree. And this is a big story as also Donald Trump was invited to the parade, but unfortunately did not come. Now, let's get into the details of these stories because they're all connected. As the China's parade was not just an isolated event, as it comes during a time of rising global geopolitical tensions all around the world. As we've really seen a strained trade relation between the US and India, as this is a major friction point, as with new US tariffs impacting key Indian exports in sectors like textiles and agricultural goods, as a trade deal still seems very far out of reach, and the lack of progress is creating a sense of strategic frustration, as many analysts are suggesting that the US policies are contributing to a geopolitical realignment that could actually push India closer to China and Russia, which is a huge strategic shift.
Another big development, this time in Europe, centers on a new security report. It suggests that Europe's best security guarantee against Russian aggression is a strengthened Ukrainian army. This is a dramatic change from past discussions, especially after the US publicly ruled out deploying American soldiers to Ukraine. The new focus for European nations is on providing Ukraine with advanced military hardware, extensive training, and long term political commitments. This strategy puts more pressure on individual European nations to boost their own defense spending, and it raises some big questions about the future role of NATO.
Yeah, Zane. And now shifting gears to the markets, as the weakening jobs report and the Federal Reserve story is just so critical. As the latest jobs report showed a significant slowdown in hiring, with a rise in the unemployment rate to about 4.2%. And this report gives the Federal Reserve more leeway to consider a rate cut at its upcoming meeting, as the Fed does have a dual mandate, and it's to keep the prices stable and maximum employment within the economy. With inflation still being a high concern, but the jobs picture weakening, a rate cut would be intended to boost the economic activity and hiring. But it also runs the risk of reigniting inflation, which is a critical point of debate between analysts. This week, we'll be watching the Fed's upcoming meeting closely for any hints about what they will do next.
And now, finally, Roman, how about that American Bitcoin stock story? This company, which has known ties to the Trump family with a close associate on its board of directors, had an insane first day of trading after a merger. Its stock price surged by over 200% at one point, and trading was halted multiple times because of the extreme volatility. It's a classic example of the kind of speculative, headline driven excitement we see in the crypto and meme stock spaces. It really just underscores that public attention and news can drive massive price movements, often completely separate from a company's underlying business.
Yeah, Zane. And now we're going to try a new segment. It's called What's on Our Radar. We just want to give you a quick look around what's ahead and what we're going to be keeping our eyes on for the rest of the week. So, with that, Zane, what's on your radar?
Well, Roman, there are a few key things that could move the needle. First is the August jobs report, the big one everyone's been waiting for. We just got a preview, but the full non-farm payrolls and unemployment numbers for August come out tomorrow morning. This will either confirm the weakness we've seen or throw a curveball at the market's expectations for a Fed rate cut. Second thing I'm looking out for is the European GDP data. Later today, we are getting new GDP numbers from the Eurozone. This will be a key indicator of economic health in the region and could influence investor sentiment towards European stocks and the euro. And now, finally, the last on my radar is the ongoing geopolitical fallout. I want to keep an eye on any new statements or reactions from the US and Europe regarding the Chinese military parade. The diplomatic response could signal how tense relations are likely to get in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Zain. And I'll be watching for any more analysis coming out on the alphabet ruling. As we've discussed, while it was a major big win for the company and the stock did surge to a 9% increase in one day, I'm still very much on and off about it as the new rules about data sharing are a wild card. I'll be looking for any signs of how the company and its competitors plan to adapt.
That's very interesting. That is a good thing to keep on your radar, Roman. And what we're seeing this week is a perfect example of how macro level events like global geopolitics are directly influencing micro level market decisions. That China parade isn't just a military show, it's a strategic signal that encourages countries in the SCO to align more closely with Beijing. For a multinational corporation, that means they have to reevaluate their long term supply chains and consider a higher geopolitical risk premium in their business models.
Exactly, Zane. The US and India trade tensions and the European security report aren't just headlines. They're creating a real world business challenges as the companies may have to completely rethink about their export strategies to India or adjust the exposure in Eastern Europe. And even with the alphabet ruling, while the domestic story does have its global ramifications, it could set a benchmark for how these countries worldwide approach regulating tech giants. And it's also a showcase of all the legal framework in one country and how it could totally influence the operating environment for global companies.
You said it, Roman, right there. The market isn't just reacting to numbers, it's digesting a complex mix of policy, legal, and social signals. Navigating this world requires understanding the interplay between a country's foreign policy and a company's bottom line. The past 24 hours have been a stark reminder that in our interconnected world, every major event, no matter where it happens, has the potential to influence a portfolio.
Well, unfortunately, Zane, that's all the time we do have for Before the Bell with Roman and Zane. But remember, keep an eye on how all of these geopolitical events and financial trends continue to develop throughout the week and the weekend. And as always, don't forget, nothing here that we say is financial advice. And we are just some students that are sharing insights and analysis for our informational pause purposes.
And a big thank you to everyone following along. We genuinely really appreciate your engagement and curiosity. Don't forget to connect with us on TikTok and Instagram at Before the Bell Roman Zane for quick clips, updates, and insights throughout the day. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.